Hey, I'm Lauren, certified building biologist, wellness interior designer, and healthy home educator. I want to welcome you to the House Holistics podcast, where we explore how healthy buildings create healthy people. I'll be bringing you life-enhancing conversations with some of the brightest minds in the world. Perhaps your full potential is on the other side of a healthier environment. I'm your host, Lauren Riddei. Let's go deeper. Talking about EMF, I really want to have a conversation about this topic that empowers people and it doesn't disempower people, because it can be a scary subject for some. Maybe it's complex, it's vast, it can be a little frightening for people, but there's totally a way where we can talk about electromagnetic fields and electromagnetic radiation in a way that is a common sense approach that can empower someone. So are you excited to have this conversation today, Mike?
Oh my God, absolutely. I have to say, I love, and I know I've said this to you before in conversations, I love the conversations that you're having with people and the people that you're bringing in. You remind me so much of all of the reasons why I love being involved in building biology in general. People that are so passionate and care so deeply about helping others live their best, healthiest life, to raise their own personal spirits and elevations. Like that kind of energy that you have been bringing with the conversations that you've been having with people. I mean, as a professional in this field, I love it because I learn something new every time. And exactly like you're talking about, I love the positive, hopeful, uplifting element that you're bringing to this, because like you said, I think that's the most important element, whether we're talking about multiple chemical sensitivity, mold issues in our homes, EHS, or other health related issues, is how can we address these concerns without being locked in a fear state?
Right.
And realize that there's always positive steps that we can take. So yeah, I'm super excited for this. So thank you for having me on. I consider this a great honor to be here.
Oh my gosh. Well, when we met through the Building Biology Institute, I instantly connected with you. And it's so funny. We had 2 different week-long sessions together in Asheville. And I think it was this past one when we were receiving our advanced training for the EMRS, the electromagnetic radiation specialist. I don't really love the word specialist. I find that like we are educators more so in this field anyway. We're educating people around ways that they can become empowered. But I remember wanting to, like, as many meals as possible, like sit with you, Clay, Abram, shout out Abram, the coolest like 17-year-old out there.
Yeah.
But because I was just so fascinated by how your brain works, like you kind of know a little bit. Actually, I'd probably say, Mike, you know a lot about a lot of things. And you know so many details about things. And I was just fascinated by your mental capacity. And I could tell when I met you, you you have a story in this field and you have gone through some things to heal. So you have this ability to connect with people, but then you have the wisdom and the knowledge. So I just really thoroughly enjoyed meeting you for the first time. And since then, I just feel like we just have this really fun connection. And I'm so
Oh,
excited to meet you.
absolutely. And hopefully I'll be able to keep myself on the rails, because some of the lab sessions that we had together, there was so much great knowledge that was packed into that week, but it was intense. And some of the moments of just levity and laughter and fun that we had, during those moments, I mean, that was phenomenal, and I think that's also part of what we need, kind of those lighter emotional aspects when we're talking with people, whether or when we're dealing with the stuff ourselves. It's very easy to get paralyzed by fear or to want to do things so perfectly, to know every little detail, that you just stagnate and you stall yourself out. And as a professional, I mean, you really do have to make that emotional connection on a lighter level, I think, with people to help them get through some of those barriers of whatever physical issues they're going through, or whatever their situation is.
So how have you been explaining to your circle, your community of influence, what an EMRS is, and how are you sharing about the training that we've both received through the Building Biology Institute?
Well, first, I like to share with people just the general details about what building biology is, how it started, and the brilliant people that really were behind its formation. We really are just standing on the shoulders, sorry, of giants in this field. There were so many people whose knowledge and experience I know I'll never come close to. But even beyond that, I tend to find myself not going into too much details about some of the technical aspects of it with clients, because I find that there's a lot of people that have some background knowledge. And so I don't always like to rehash. I kind of like to get an understanding of what their knowledge and what their impression is. And then if there's a misperception they have or inaccuracy that they have about the subject, I like to step in and either provide them with information that, a study that explains it differently, or even just trying to break down the concepts in a way that's a little bit easier to grasp. And I think that's a holdover from my days in the tech field, where I wanted people to know the reason why they were having these issues. I wanted them to understand why this fix or this solution was going to help them with the problem. And then I also wanted them to be empowered to know what to do in the future. So a lot of times you really do have to take a step back and not worry so much about all the technical details, but maybe there's a way that you can have that conversation on a lower level, so people do start to really absorb and get that knowledge. And if there's then people that want to have a much more technical conversation about it, I'll gladly have that, because I love some of those nuances and some of the science behind EMF and being an EMRS.
Yeah. And there are quite a few myths that I find, not that I'm necessarily busting through these myths, but there is some miseducation about EMF. What are some of the elements that you're seeing with your clients or even your peers where you're having to re-educate and kind of having to say, actually, this we call it EMR because...
Right. Most of the people that I come across, they don't have a concept that there's additional types of electromagnetic radiation that affect them.
Right.
People are so focused on the RF, and even then, only on specific things about RF, like our cell phones and what are, our cell phones are giving off. Exactly. Sorry. So there's a lot of people that aren't aware of magnetic fields or electric fields, geopathic stress. More and more, I'm considering including our lighting as another form of EMF and the effect that it has on our built environment and on our health. So that to me is one of the biggest ones, and it turns into a big aha moment for a lot of people, because they might not sleep with their cell phone next to their bed, but they'll have lamps and alarm clocks that are producing electric fields throughout the entirety of their night, and they're wondering why they're not sleeping properly. Even common household devices that we think are good for us could be putting out gigantic magnetic signals. I just figured that out with my daughter's dream machine.
That's right.
Even I got duped and taken by it. I thought it was just this, innocent little device, but meanwhile, it's producing a gigantic magnetic field that could be affecting her sleep and well-being, even being located across the room. So the different types of electromagnetic fields and the different types of electromagnetic radiation, and a lot about 5G. There's a lot of people that are concerned just with 5G, or they might have a lot of misinformation about what it is, how it can affect them, its pervasiveness. So those are the two biggest ones.
Mm-hmm. And there's a little bit of a confusion with 5G on the Wi-Fi router, and then 5G in terms of cellular communication. Can you just briefly flesh that out a little bit? Because there is some confusion.
Absolutely. So 5G, when it refers to cellular technology, just refers to the 5th generation. So the next iteration, designed to have higher speeds, more data throughput, more connected users, all of those fun bells and whistles that the marketing people try to sell us on and make it seem like it's a good thing and we have to have this. When they refer to 5G from a wireless standpoint, that's referring to the actual frequency. So it's a range that goes from 5 up to almost 6 gigahertz. They just kind of truncate that and just call it, like 2.4 G, which is 2.4 gigahertz, which is the same spectrum as like Zigbee and Bluetooth, but then also 5G or 5 gigahertz. It's just, we like to truncate things, which can be kind of confusing. But I think it's one of those things where it's kind of like, well, regardless, neither one of them are good to be in its presence.
Right, right. And we aren't educated about this technology. And so I think that's part of the reason why some people are maybe waking up to this reality and feeling a bit duped. Like, wait, why didn't I know that having my phone in my pocket would have negative consequences? Or why didn't I know that having my Wi-Fi router on all the time could be causing some of this brain fog or some of this inability to think clearly? And so, with people that are waking up to becoming aware, just in the same way that so many people have become aware of fabric health and textiles. I mean, the studies that are coming out about synthetic materials in our clothing. I mean, it's kind of now most people, maybe not most people know about that, but I just see eventually more and more people will become aware of this knowledge about empowering themselves to protect themselves from some of this technology in the same way that we have seen with food, fabrics, etc.
Yeah, it's really fascinating to me because on one hand, I have a difficult time understanding how people can think these things are good. But then as I'm digging into things more and more, we want to put so much faith and trust in scientific institutions, medical institutions, and since the very early days of radio frequency technologies, I think there's been a lot of scientific misperceptions or misunderstandings that have just carried on as things developed. And then even now, as new technology is rolled out, it's very much tested in a complete silo. For example, there's been studies that show that pure high frequency RF signals, take the 2.4 or the 5 gigahertz signal that your wireless router puts out, when it is not transmitting any information, it's not biologically active. And that's how a lot of these manufacturers and governing agencies and NGOs that are responsible for setting safe RF limits, that's how they're testing things.
Hmm.
And they're ignoring some of the other realities of how these things actually work. So they're not testing the modulations that are then injected on those signals to carry the information. And even that itself is such a technical process to try to understand that I sit and struggle with it sometimes as I'm reading these studies. So it's really difficult for people to get that. And I think that's taken advantage of a little bit because it allows you to present this technology as something that isn't harmful, which on one hand is true in one situation, but when we go and look at the real world situations or the real world uses of it, it's not. So it becomes very difficult for people to understand and to grasp. And yeah, at the same time, I think we all need to take a step back when it comes to some of the technology that's in our lives and really begin to have some of that question too, like, are these things really adding value?
Hmm.
Do we really need to have the exposure to this? Is the convenience worth it? Because there is no free lunch, so to speak. Everything has its trade-off, whether it's the convenience or price of wearing synthetic fabrics that are then poisoning our body and causing skin issues or rashes, infertility, whatever the case may be. It's kind of the same thing with our tech. Like, it's great to
Absolutely.
be able to walk away from my desk and get my emails whenever I want, but what is the long-term effect of that
Right.
physically and then also mentally?
Right. The precautionary principle is the perfect fit in this scenario because what is the harm in practicing safe distance from tech? There really is no harm outside of maybe some would say it's inconvenient. Uh, but outside of that, what is the harm with putting your phone on airplane mode or turning your Wi-Fi router off at night? There's no harm in that to practice the precautionary principle.
No, absolutely not. But that's where there's also a huge element that I try to bring up with my clients about, again, looking at your habits and the lifestyle that you're living. Do you
Hmm.
need to have your phone all the time? Even something as simple as putting your phone in airplane mode when you're driving can make such a huge difference in terms of your overall RF exposure because now you don't have this device that's
Right.
ramping up its power to try to get a better signal as you're bouncing from tower to tower to tower. It's such a simple thing, but for a lot of people, that can feel fearful to lose that connection.
Right.
There's a lot of worry that comes up. Like, what if somebody needs me? What if I need something? You know, I won't be able to listen to music that way. I won't be able to listen to podcasts. So
Okay,
there's a,
this is
yeah,
so interesting, Mike, because the fear of EMF, right, is one thing, or EMR. But then you nailed it, the fear of being unavailable. So either way, whether you are choosing to protect yourself in a way that is proactive by putting your phone
yeah,
on airplane mode in the car, there's another fear still there for most people of being unavailable.
yeah,
And so either way, we as humans tend to operate in a lot of fear regardless.
yeah, yeah. Even that, I don't know if I would necessarily call it fear, but also the inability to just focus on one single task at a time. And since we're using the example of driving, how often are you out driving and you see people that are so preoccupied
Mhm.
with so many elements of what's going on, whether it's looking at their phone or, fidgeting with the car's computer or looking at the cameras, that it's kind of fearful to be around them. And then what ends up happening is then we rely on the manufacturers to build us cars that have more RF producing devices like blind spot detection and the automatic radars
Radar.
that are then bombarding us even more because we
Mhm.
can't stop and be present in that moment and be disconnected from
Right.
those things, which is, I realize it even within my own life, how difficult it is to always be present. Like, because I've been so conditioned and trained in life to always be available. That's what people want. You know, I've got clients that want to be able to email me at any time of the day and get a response within an hour. And I live decades of my life like that. So even for me, it's a struggle. So I'm not trying to put anybody on blast or, you know, make it seem like I'm holier than thou when it comes to this. But it is something that I realize, even as part of my own personal journey, that I need to work so much on. In fact, there was even a great book that I just picked up called The 12 Monotasks by a gentleman named Thatcher Wine that talks about, you know, just that, having very intentional focus on specific tasks during the day, whether it's walking and you're just walking for the sake of walking and being immersed in the environment you're in, not listening to music or podcasts and enjoying that, reading for the fun of it, you know, all of these things. And I feel like having that mindset and trying to be more mindful about that also has a side effect of helping me step away from my devices a little bit more. Because now when I'm engaging in those tasks, I know it's just about that task and not about having that device. And I think to some level, there will always be that fear of being disconnected, but it's certainly a lot less.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you never know. We could eventually become incredibly telepathic creatures where we can just send messages to one another and we don't need our devices.
But maybe that's a problem because of these devices.
Yeah.
You know,
Also,
it's really, I've been getting really deep in the works of a Greek biophysicist named Demetrius Panagopoulos right now.
Yes, please share more.
And in his studies and in his research, he's really drilled down on what he thinks is the root cause of a lot of the biological effects of electromagnetic radiation. And that's the extreme low frequency portions of it, that 3 hertz to 3 kilohertz signals. And
Also known as L4ELF.
yes, correct. And a lot of those extremely low frequencies mirror the frequencies that the Earth naturally has, the Schumann resonance, 7.83 hertz. And when you look at a lot about biological life, a lot of living matter, a lot of our brain functions are tuned to that very same frequency, which seems kind of beyond coincidence that those two would match up perfectly. So what ends up happening is the information that's then embedded on that 5G signal, you know, whatever the frequency is, to put that on it, they put it on in those ELF ranges, those extremely low frequencies, which then end up interrupting our own biological functions and having an effect that way.
Our electromagnetic fields around our own personhood, because we have a field that can expand up to 30 feet.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I mean, it's an amazing antenna. We are transmitters. We are receivers. I mean, everything the cellular technology was modeled after was us as humans.
Yeah.
I mean, we are an amazing invention.
Yeah, we are electrochemical beings, and any sort of unnatural interruption to those frequencies is extremely harmful and detrimental to it. So we really should be thinking about really protecting that space. You know, is it worth it?
Right.
You know?
And that's what's been shielded from our awareness. It is that we have an electromagnetic field that has been hidden from us intentionally because of the essentially the superpowers that we all have to be able to connect, to be able to love, to be able to open our hearts to one another. That's an amazing gift that so many people don't even realize they have, or they have other words for it. Like I'm getting an intuitive hit, or that person called me when I thought of them. And that was so random, right? And I think people are starting to realize, wait a second, there could be something here. In the community I run in, it's very normal to talk about these things, but I am aware that there are so many people who have no idea how truly gifted they are. And there's something to it. So to me, this conversation about EMR it's not threatening to me, because I've studied it and I've researched it and I've put in my own protective mechanisms, but I also realize that it was modeled after ourselves.
Yeah. Well, it is really fascinating. I've started to also dig into biogeometry
Yeah.
and some of the works of Dr. Kareem and some of the things that he's brought up. A lot of researchers in some of those fields, they've started the very initial steps of identifying and testing to good success forms of communication and energy transfer that go beyond modern physics as we know it. And I think a lot of times existing scientific communities just want to dismiss that and push it down, because it can be a very challenging thing, not just from a personal and spiritual level, but also from an institutional level. Like if we all had the same knowledge of what cell phones do to us, what would that do to that entire industry? I think we would all make such different choices
Mm-hmm.
as consumers and demand such different things. And that can generate another set of fear within, kind of that other side.
Right. Yeah. And the majority of studies that show cell phones are safe are funded by the wireless companies.
Yeah, and when they study cell phones in particularly, and they're looking at the specific absorption rate, the SAR rating, they're only focusing on the thermal effects of non-ionizing radiation. So radiation that's, below the infrared and the light spectrums, things that aren't going to cause an immediate physical reaction within our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And at the rates of transmissions that cell phones use, the thermal effects are so low to begin with that it's really kind of a laughable metric to
Mm-hmm.
even try to come up with. And even beyond the facts that non-ionizing radiation really doesn't cause thermal effects, it's also not a true measure. It really just becomes an estimate. So it's not like in the laboratories when they're testing the latest iPhone that they're really coming up with a genuine number. It's kind of their best guess as what it is.
Right.
And then again, when they test cell phones for safety, they also look at the pure unmodulated signals that it's connecting to, that the radios are producing. So again, it's testing and looking at something that doesn't reflect real world usage at all.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those metrics that people really shouldn't focus on as an element of safety,
Mm-hmm.
because if you're using your phone actively, you're exposed to all of the harmful things, whether you're using a Galaxy S10 from 15 years ago or an iPhone 16 that you just picked up today. So I like to try to steer people away from measures and tests like that, just because they are so biased,
Mm-hmm.
and focus more on pattern change and what they can do differently to reduce their exposure, as opposed to, yeah, buy a flip phone that, isn't going to give you the functionality that you need, and you're going to be using it more because of that,
Yeah.
versus use it for 5 minutes and put it down.
Well, I'm very excited to get into solutions towards the end of this podcast. I do want to talk about the difference, though, for people that have not heard about ionizing radiation and non ionizing. So let's talk about that for a few minutes. What's the difference?
So, ionizing radiation is on the higher end of the frequency spectrum. And on a simple level, there's so much energy within those waves that it can cause a reaction within your cells immediately to lose an electron, to become
Yeah.
essentially ions. And when that happens, that can cause physical damage right away. So if you think about cosmic radiation is an ionic radiation.
Gamma
Uh,
rays,
what? I'm sorry?
gamma rays or X
Gamma rays,
rays.
exactly. Sunlight, natural light, to an extent, can be an ionizing radiation, depending on the intensity. It's not always going to affect us on an extremely harmful level. It will
Right.
depend on the exposure and the source and the intensity and the duration of exposure. But those are things that are going to cause an immediate health reaction that we can see, measure, or test. And that's where also a lot of scientific studies, mainstream scientific studies, they themselves will get hung up on that. Well, if it isn't causing an immediate effect or immediate harm, and it's not ionizing, then it's fine. But again, that ignores some of the other elements of it.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said before, if you look at frequencies in the non-ionizing spectrum, by themselves, they don't necessarily cause any immediate effect, and definitely very low risk of a thermal effect. And a pure signal by itself isn't really even going to cause any effect. It's as soon as low frequency modulations are added that the negative biological effects starts to happen. And that, again, is such a disconnect between what mainstream science and businesses that are putting out this technology, what they're focusing on, and what, independent researchers and thousands of studies around the world have found, to really be the case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, non-ionizing is the Bluetooth, the Wi-Fi, the cell towers, anything that's sending and receiving signals. And I think that's important for people to recognize because there is a natural magnetic radiation coming from natural things, but then there are these man-made devices and signals and frequencies that are being added, and that's what we're talking about here. The man-made. Do you use non-native when you're talking about EMF, Mike?
I jump back and forth.
Okay.
It really depends on who I'm talking to.
Okay.
It's a point that I think personally, when I'm having the conversations with people, I need to be more clear because, like you said, there are natural forms of radiation that every bit of life on Earth has evolved in the presence of.
Right.
Even if that's radon coming from the ground or light coming from the sky.
Well,
And that's where a lot of people that don't necessarily believe that man-made or non-natural EMFs are harmful, they'll point to examples like sunlight.
mhm.
They're absolutely correct on one level. However, there's quite a few more elements that go into why sunlight isn't harmful compared to why the non-ionizing radiation from our phone is harmful. We could totally go into that if you want.
All right, you want to riff?
It'll
Go
get
for
super nerdy.
it.
Well, when we look at natural forms of radiation, there's a huge amount of variability and randomness to it. And one of the elements that we see when it's studied is that light and that radiation, those waves are not polarized, meaning they're coming at you from all sorts of random angles, an infinite number of possibilities. And there's a ton of variation also with the frequency, the intensity of those things. So it's something that, our bodies and life are just like, no, this is just here. It's around us.
Right.
But when we start to look at non-native or man-made EMFs, we find that they have a specific plane of polarization, meaning that it's coming at you from a very certain angle. And that's because of the geometry and the physical components of how those things are generated. As the electrons are oscillating back and forth, that's what creates the electromagnetic wave that comes out and blah, 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 comes at you like a little beam. Well, our bodies have a tremendously difficult time processing things like that. And then when you talk about creating really complex waveforms like they utilize with 5G, where they will have multiple different waves coming at you or coming at a device at the same time, it ends up creating something called constructive interference, which basically amplifies the signal. It's what allows, 5G phone connections to stream a YouTube video 5 seconds faster than if you're on a 4G connection. But that sort of activity, that non-natural activity and creation, ends up having a very harsh biological impact on our cells when we're exposed to that. It ends up creating a forced oscillation within our cells because they sense that wave and they go, oh, this is what we're supposed to be vibrating on. This is the frequency that we're supposed to act. And since it's so much stronger and can be so much more pronounced than natural EMFs, either from the earth or within our own bodies, that starts to kind of take over. It's almost like a crystal singing bowl. Have you ever used one?
Absolutely.
And if you use it gently and you strike it gently and you let it resonate at the frequency that it's designed to resonate at, it sounds beautiful and it's great. But if you start to go too fast, faster than you should, or hit it too aggressively, not only does it create disharmony in the sound, but you also affect the whole integrity of that bowl. And you can easily crack or destroy it by getting it out of phase with where it wants to be. Our bodies are a little bit like that.
And I think that's a brilliant example. There are some estimates that say the electromagnetic field radiation in cities that is outside of nature is, I think it's like over 1 trillion times greater than nature. And so you think, yeah, no wonder I feel anxious in New York or a big city. Like, no wonder I feel like I'm shaky or my nervous system is out of whack or I just need to close my eyes. Like, no wonder these symptoms that we sense in large cities, not everyone, but I'll speak for my husband and I, we don't feel awesome. We don't feel great. Now, granted, like I'm in a place of my health journey where I can tolerate exposures like that more often. Whereas when I was pretty sick, I could not expose myself to those environments because my environmental load was too full. But now that I am healthier and stronger, I am able to go into these places and not have such a cellular agitation. And I think people know exactly what we're talking about. If EMF or EMR is a new concept, I would encourage listeners, pay attention to your body on a cellular level of what's happening when you encounter a space that might be busy electronically. So thoughts on that, Mike? Just kind of your own body as an antenna and your experience in large cities.
Oh gosh. It really makes you stop and think how many health issues that we face are really just because of environmental toxins and could easily be dealt with by changing our environment or changing our exposures as opposed to seeking other treatment options. So if I can go and talk about my own personal journey a little
Please.
bit, for a very long time, and I'm still engaged in this industry too, I've been a part of the meeting and event space on a technical level. And a lot of it did have to deal with wireless networks and designing and deploying them. And so I spent a lot of time being exposed, to a lot of the toxins of travel, being on airplanes, being in foreign hotels, where they're using chemical products, but then also being in really RF dense environments. And at the beginning of my journey into building biology and looking at the root causes of EMF, I wasn't looking from a personal level because I didn't think those things had even started to affect me. I thought my constitution and my body was strong enough that I wasn't affected. But looking back, I think even going further back into childhood, I had sensitivities to a lot of these things, and you just don't realize it. So, I can remember being a young boy and being so incredibly bothered by chemical smells and just having physical reactions to that or sensitivity to other environmental issues. But I wasn't taught, and I never knew how to be in touch or in tune with my body. I thought that was normal, And then even as I got older, a lot of either physical and, mental things that I would experience, whether it was depression or people thinking that I have ADHD, I really think that it was more an element of the environments that I was exposed to, especially being around lots of equipment, being exposed to tons of artificial light, and being exposed to tons of RF. So I've taken a lot of steps to try to correct those things, not just addressing the sources of my life, but then also what I can do to build my body back up to it. Because I think that is such an important thing to do, is to kind of lower your own sensitivity to those things as you're making all the positive changes in your life, so you can still function. Yeah, I'm having one of those moments right now.
It's so the story, Mike, though, is really interesting because of your exposure to radio frequency and your exposure to this industry. So, what was the moment that you wanted to pursue an education in building biology? Specifically, what was the moment where you knew, oh my gosh, I need to become an electromagnetic radiation specialist and start educating others?
Well, many years ago, I had a lot of moments where I was questioning my own personal beliefs and stories and narratives that I was told, businesses, a lot of different things. And I realized that I was living a life pretty unaligned with how I actually feel, with either companies that I supported, where I shopped, businesses that I did work for. And I started to question a lot of things. And at that time, I started to have a lot more people come to me with concerns about EMF exposure. And honestly, at the time, I was so ingrained in the environments that I was in. And I was, of the belief, well, if this technology harmed us, that it wouldn't be allowed to be deployed. We wouldn't have it to use. I don't think these people understand. So I would help people on a very topical level. Well, turn off your wireless, do things like that. And it took a little while for me to really break down some of my own mental blocks and really start to dig into things and go, all right, if what they're saying is true, there's got to be proof for it. And so I started going down those paths, and I started finding the works of people that I really respected, that were highly intelligent, highly educated, that were finding every little bit of evidence that, you know, non-natural EMF exposure was so harmful. I mean, the US military, they've had studies out that they produced almost yearly during the Cold War that talked about the physical and the biological impacts of non-natural EMF. You know, so it's been a bit of a personal journey. In the very early stages, it was about wanting to help out other people. It really wasn't about sitting and thinking about my own personal care, because I didn't think that was causing any of my personal issues. You know, some of my symptoms and some of the things that I felt and was experiencing, I thought were from other sources. You know, one of the things that I still struggle with, that I had a lot of issues with, is even just like brain fog and being able to recall things, or like just before, I just lost my train of thought, you know, and there's a lot of doctors and professionals that I've talked to over my life that would just attribute it to, you know, well, you have this disorder, or you have this thing,
You must
or
be gluten intolerant.
yeah. And really, I don't think that's the case anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I've I've become a lot more aware that I will start to have physical issues based on my exposure to this. I've spent a lot of my week in front of computers and being connected, and I can feel it physically. I can feel it in how my brain functions. Um, I can see it in my eyes. My vision, when I, you know, later today, is going to be horrible because I'm looking at the computer screen and I've got LED, you know, video lights, which I know that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
So it's taken a while for me to really to become in tune enough with my own body to realize, like, okay, yeah, this does affect all of us. This isn't affecting this person over here because they were already sick with something.
Right.
This is something that we all need to be aware of. And on a certain level, not that I'm happy to realize how much my physical is being affected by this, but I really do appreciate it as almost a gift being in this field, because it allows me to empathize with clients on a much deeper level, and have so much more of a genuine connection to their health concerns and the things that they're facing than I ever had, you know, 6 years ago, when I was just doing this, you know, because I thought I could help them out a little bit. Now it feels like I can truly make a difference.
And you started off as a skeptic.
Oh,
Right?
absolutely.
You didn't
Absolutely.
you didn't necessarily believe that there was a cause and effect.
No, for me, I thought it was a lot of the symptoms that people were coming to me were just manifestations, you know, because they were so concerned, and they were so inside their head with those things. And not that I ever wanted to be dismissive of people, even thinking that, because your mind is incredibly powerful. You can absolutely manifest completely horrible symptoms, you know, if you're in a deep fear state, where you're coming from that state of fight or flight.
Right.
Um, yeah, but there's that part of me that thankfully grew, where it's just like, well, I need to know why. If these things can't harm us, I need to be able to articulate that to people and say, listen, it's not harmful because of this reason, how, you know, it's interacting with your body this way. And so the more I dug into it, the more I'm like, okay, I'm the one that's wrong. I'm the one that really needs to change my understanding and my attitude and my belief system about this. And it's difficult. It was a struggle for me initially because, you're now questioning something that you've thought, for almost your entire life.
Yeah. Well, the humility is part of the hero's journey, Mike. I mean, often things that we have passed judgment upon are our biggest lessons to be learned. And so I'm not surprised that you are a skeptic and you didn't necessarily believe that these things were having a negative implication. However, what I learned about you the first time I met you was that you're a question asker and you are curious by nature. And I believe that the most interesting people in the world are the curious ones that don't just accept status quo, that don't just accept what someone says in a white lab coat as fact. And so I think that's why we have a connection, because we are both curious thinkers and we go down rabbit hole after rabbit hole and we research and we research. But we also are aware that there's this mystery too in life, that there's something so much bigger that, of course, it would make sense that as frequency beings, there would be a frequency type of, I don't even know what the word is, but that we are coming up against this frequency that isn't necessarily healing for us. So it just makes sense. But part of it is having that mind that is open to what if. Like, what if? And then you go down these rabbit holes and you discover all these new things. And I think it's beautiful, your journey.
Well, I think it's so important because, again, part of my nature, and anytime that I help people with anything, whether it's a technical problem that they have or helping them understand the effects of their home and the devices around them, I want people to understand and to feel empowered and to have that knowledge, because I think, one, it can help demystify things, and it can start to take some of that unspoken power, that
Yeah.
spiritual energy. It can take some of that away from those things.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's perfectly fine to be worried about the effects of your phone, but if you're living in such paranoia and fear about that, if you don't understand the changes you can make or what you can do differently, I find a lot of time people just get stagnant and they don't end up making change because they are so afraid. They get locked. They get locked in a mindset of, they don't know what to do. They don't know what to believe because all of that knowledge, it has been made to seem like it's so far beyond their grasp. So I really always wanted to be able to break that down to people and have a conversation on a level that they can digest that information and make the best decision for themselves. Because there's people I run into even on EMF surveys that they don't want to give up their phone.
Right.
And they, after a conversation will understand the risks, but they're willing to accept that and to live their life with that. So even if they're not doing something that I would recommend or do myself or really want people to see, they're at least in a better place mentally coming into that.
Mm-hmm.
And they can kind of just live life from there. And I think that's a really important element that goes along with any kind of
Mm-hmm.
remediation or mitigation in people's lives, not just the physical elements of it, but how they're being helped on a spiritual, emotional, and mental level.
Yeah, and when the student is ready, the teacher will come, right? Not everyone is ready for some of these mitigation strategies, and that's okay. I certainly wasn't at a certain point in my life, and you weren't either, right? And so there were
No,
very few
absolutely.
people, yeah, being teachers for us. And so, um, I think those people that are calling you, Mike, and those people that are emailing you for help, I would love for you to share a little bit more about the services you offer to help people maybe mitigate some of the risk in their home environments and in their personal lives. So can you share a little bit more what you specialize in?
Right. It, you know, again, I'll give a little bit of backstory because I love doing that for some reason.
Please do.
Um, so first, if I can, just even the name Hazel Solutions, that has been a name and an idea that I've had, gosh, for probably close to a decade now,
Wow.
long before I even settled on this. And the whole concept behind it was, some of the symbolism of the hazel tree. It's been revered through a lot of ancient cultures, particularly the Celtic culture, and in their mythology, where it just represented uh, a tree or a staff or a wand of protection and knowledge. I mean, frequently wizards and sorceresses were pictured with hazel staves, and there's a whole story about salmon eating hazelnuts and gaining all the knowledge of the world. And I thought there was such a beauty to that
Yeah.
in combining, something with such a natural element and really embodying the ethos of what I wanted in whatever that form of that business was, and was, again, imparting that knowledge and that protection and that wisdom onto people. This isn't, I never wanted it to be something that was outside of people's grasps. I wanted people to take the things that I learned and be able to apply them not just to their own lives, but to help out other people, to kind of get that ripple effect going. So that's where the name Hazel
I
Solutions
love that.
started. And I tried it with a lot of different businesses that I had, even one that focused on providing privacy and technical security to people, but it never felt right. It was never a good fit until I started going down the building biology path. And then it just felt like the perfect natural fit. Primarily with Hazel Solutions, I focus on doing electromagnetic radiation assessments for people, looking at the different sources within their own home and even external to their home, and helping them find workable solutions that will work for their lives and with their lives.
Yeah.
Just because in the past, especially with some of the tech solutions that I used to try to implement with people, if you go in too severe or too overboard or too pricey, people are going to get turned away. They're going to feel like the solutions are out of their reach financially, or that they become more intrusive in their lives than they want to implement. And then they don't implement them and they don't get better. So I wanted to create a business focused around that really created approachable solutions for people. I wanted people to know that no matter what level of financial investment they were capable of making, of what emotional or technological investment that they wanted to make, that there was always a solution that would make some improvement in their life. There's a great saying, I'm not going to try to repeat the French version of from Voltaire, but it's basically, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. It would be great if we could all live in fully shielded homes, but we don't all have $50,000 to implement a solution like that, or we can't always rewire with armored cabling. So I really wanted to make sure that my focus and that my intention was always on providing a wide range of solutions that anybody could implement, and really being a supportive force in those people's lives. In addition to that, I'd love to also include some of the environmental factors that can become issues. Like, to me, it is so important that we keep track of air quality. Are the CO2 levels in your home too high? All of those things can create negative effects too that you might think are coming from EHS or RF exposure. So I like to take a very multifaceted approach and include a lot of other things, because all of those little elements, if we can make small improvements to all of them, that can make a huge difference in our lives. And one of the things recently that I've started including, and this was really because of your own recommendation to me that I found to be extremely, extremely helpful, is making the recommendation of limbic training and brain retraining. And that has been such an amazing journey for me, but it has such a great value of helping people lower their sensitivity to these environmental toxins so that they can still function. So maybe we can't do anything about their neighbor's wireless, but if we can help their body and their mind be less reactive to its presence,
That's right.
that also has such tremendous, tremendous value.
That's right. Because we can come in and create the healthiest environment possible. I mean, we could get Mike over there, putting in MC cable. We could have Mike set up the best systems in the world, shielded environment, like clickers to turn off everything that we don't want on. But if that client does not feel safe still in their body, then it's no good. And so I'm so thrilled, Mike, that you share this opinion with me as well, that we must also, with the environmental corrections, come inside, come home to ourselves, and strengthen that inner ability to know that, yes, when I can lower environmental toxins and I can lower my burden, I can tolerate some of these exposures as well. And we have become so disconnected from our nervous system and kind of home base within that we can easily become overwhelmed and tend to fear things. But yeah, there I also will encourage clients when I work with them from the design new build side of things, the construction side of things, like I will work with you if you are willing to pursue a limbic system slash brain retraining approach, because we want you ultimately to feel safe inside your environment, but also safe inside here. And then that combination is brilliant.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those steps that I had previously ignored in some of my recommendations to people, because if we look at the rain barrel effect, a lot of times in a lot of situations when people are exhibiting signs of EHS or multiple chemical sensitivity, their bodies are just so physically overwhelmed
Yeah.
that even if we remove some of those physical elements in their environment that are causing that, they could still be in that state of their bodies just being overburdened.
Yeah.
And reducing that mental load and helping their body reset and feel safe. I mean, that's such a vital and important part of it, you know. It just helps to take some more of that load off and get people to a state where their bodies can begin to heal. And it's amazing too to hear other people's stories that have, unfortunately had really severe issues that have been able to correct them by using techniques like that.
Yeah, whereas before I would have not been able to mentally and emotionally be inside a moldy hotel room or be inside of a busy city environment because of the EHS threats. Whereas now I recognize that I have strengthened that internal dialogue and I can expose myself now and be okay. Now, granted, like my environment that I spend most of my time in has really been remediated with a lot of solutions that, yes, have taken years to do. I did one thing at a time. And that's key for people to recognize that they can call Mike and have him come over and tinker with everything. And get you jump started, it's actually a brilliant solution. And I would encourage everyone to call Mike or another EMRS specialist to come in and help them kind of kickstart their healing journey when it comes towards EMR. And or the slow approach is great too. Like implementing one habit of, okay, I can put my phone on airplane mode before I put it on my body. Let me just work on that practice for a while, and then I'll take the next step. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And especially for me, life can be so dynamic. Like I'll frequently have to go out of town for a week or 10 days or 2 weeks at a time. And I'm in environments that I can't control. I mean, what do I do when I'm in a crappy hotel room and I can smell, cigarette smoke seeping up from the casino floor, or, I'm in a parking lot and I'm surrounded by cell towers. So the solution for me in the past, especially during travel, was to bring so much stuff with me. Air purifiers and water cleaners, and it became such a burden, and it became so difficult that if one of those elements were there, I was inside my own head the entire time. I'm going to be sick. I'm going to be sick because I didn't bring my filter this time, and I would get sick. So taking that step back, it's fun to play that mental game of, well, did I get sick because what was in the room, or did I get sick because I was focused on that? And I was so worried that I couldn't control every element of my environment that I put more of a burden on my body that made me sick. And I think, especially with the limbic system, the limbic retraining system, I think in a lot of those situations, it really was, I was doing it to myself because there was so much added stress because of all the factors that I couldn't control, rather than just letting my body be at peace and focusing on, okay, we'll stay in the background and protect you from what's going on. Don't even worry about it. I'm sitting there going, there's a cell tower, and there's a cell tower, and there's mold in my bathroom. And those things are definitely real physical concerns, not to minimize them at all.
Right.
But it really has become like that extra tool, that little bit of armor, that the best part is it never leaves me.
Yeah.
I can sit and do the exercises that are going to help bring my spirit up, raise my elevation a little bit, anywhere at any time. I don't have to plug it in. I don't have to do anything. There's no crystals, nothing.
Right.
It's
Right.
an incredibly powerful tool.
You said, oh no, I'm going to get sick. I'm going to get sick. I'm going to get sick. And guess what? I got sick.
Yeah.
And that right there, we can end it, because we are kind of the captains of our ship mentally. And so this is such a multiple fold approach. Is, yes, there are threats in our environment to be aware of, to mitigate, but never do we want to approach these things from a fear-based approach, only ever from a place of empowerment. And so what's beautiful about limbic system retraining, and there are multiple types out there. There's the Gupta program, there is DNRS, there's Primal Trust. We have all the tools already within inside us. So I love what you said. We don't need to plug anything in. We don't need to add something in. We are right here already ready to go. And sometimes we just need help to know how to work this tool that is our body, because we weren't necessarily all given the awareness or the education that we are antennas, we are transmitters, we are like radios, and we are frequency, electromagnetic, chemical beings. We are amazing creatures. And so I love, Mike, that you are now implementing that into your practice. And I can't recommend your company enough. I hired Diana to come to my house and help kickstart me. Mike, you would do the same thing for clients, and you travel, right? You're willing to travel?
I will go anywhere and help anything. I've had some interesting experiences so far.
Yeah. Well, I can't recommend you
I
enough.
love stuff like that because everybody
Yeah.
represents a different, unique challenge, and everybody needs support in their own way. So I love to think that the people that have been coming into my world, you know, for those reasons are people that need
Yeah.
just that little touch that I can bring.
Yes. Yes. Well, you offer a balanced approach to real practical, and then also you offer, I believe, the spiritual approach as well, that we are much stronger than we've been told. And I wouldn't ever hesitate to say call Mike and have him come to your environment to remediate and to mitigate and to fix and also to bless. Mike, I just feel like you have so many gifts that people are just blessed by your presence. They enjoy being around you. So just your person alone is healing. So just have Mike over for tea, and just his presence alone will fix any electromagnetic field.
Yeah, but again, you know, correcting issues, whether it's, you know, issues with chemical toxicities or exposure or EMF issues, it's such a complex thing.
Yeah,
And you can't just take a singular approach to it. You can't just go in and blanket statement say, we're going to shield your whole home.
right.
I don't, that doesn't work for me. And I know that doesn't work for a lot of other people too, but that's a whole other conversation. And I don't know. There's a part of me, that really enjoys making people feel better
Mm-hmm,
and making them feel safer
mm-hmm,
in their own space
mm-hmm.
and making them feel like they'll be okay with whatever is going on.
That's right.
Even if we can't do the bucket list, you know, perfect EMF mitigation, you know, just bringing some peace and some solution is, I mean, it's a powerful thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I love doing it.
Well, you're good at it. Really good at it, Mike.
Well, I appreciate your kind words. Thank you.
As we wrap up, is there anything that you want to touch base on or mention?
Can I read a quote from somebody?
Yes, please.
Okay, sorry, hold on a second. And I will say this might make me cry because
Well,
I love it.
hold on
I
to
love it
yours.
so much. Oh, it's totally going to make me cry. I can feel myself tearing up now. So this comes from my total man crush, Demetrius Panagopoulos, in his amazing book, Electromagnetic Fields of Wireless Communication, Health, Biological and Health Effects. It's so nerdy, and
You are
I love
so
it though.
nerdy. It's unbelievable. It's amazing.
Yeah, but I just love, I don't know. I just love this quote. Sorry, this is going to take me a second. We are gifted to live on this beautiful planet. We should love and respect it and live in harmony with it without destroying it. We should try not to disturb its natural balance by destroying the forest, changing the weather, genetically modifying our food and the natural organisms, filling the sky with thousands of satellites, and polluting the atmosphere with chemicals and artificial polarized EMFs and EMR. Instead of trying to inhabit other planets unfriendly to life, we should rather protect our home Earth, which is unique in the known universe. The balance of our planet is very fragile, and so is our existence. We all share the same home and the same future. It is our duty to protect it.
Mm,
And
wow.
I read that same quote, gosh, probably about 1,000 times. I'm surprised I don't know it by heart. And I love that last line. It's our duty to protect it. And I feel that not just for myself, but for each one of us. And if I can help empower anybody
Yeah.
to fulfill some of that journey and some of that role and responsibility, I'm so happy to be a part of that. Sorry. I didn't fully
Wow.
cry like I thought I was going to. Proud of myself.
That is beautifully and brilliantly said. Thank you, Mike, for offering this gift to the world. There are so many people that are going to need your help and your guidance and your teaching. And again, your presence alone, I believe, is healing. So thank you so much for taking the time to share this container with me, for offering your knowledge and your expertise. So I really appreciate you, and I'm proud to call you my friend.
Well, thank you. It really has been an honor here. I cannot understate the amount of respect and appreciation and love that I have for you and everything that you're doing to elevate the world around us. I knew from the moment I met you that you were a person who is going to truly change the world
Aw.
on such an amazing level. So to even share some of this space with you is truly an honor. And I am proud and feel deeply blessed to call you a colleague and, more importantly, a friend. So thank you for having me.
And fellow nerds.
Absolutely.
All right, well, we'll have to come back on for part 2 eventually, Mike, and maybe we'll get into some really practical things that people can do. But that's for another day. We both just feel passionate about empowering people around this subject of electromagnetic radiation versus disempowering. So again, Mike, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.